In today's show, it's a mailbag episode answering listener submitted questions all episode long about Shaedon Sharpe and also Shaedon Sharpe. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. It's free on all platforms 5 days a week, coming at you every single weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. We got a mailbag episode for you. Many questions submitted by listeners. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag episode, here's how you do it. Email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. It's pretty simple. I bet you can figure that one out. I will put the email address in the episode description for this episode. But future mailbags, send me emails. It's the best way to get in touch with me regardless. Longer form, easier to go back and forth, all of those things, less... no algorithm to hide at responses or whatever. Send me an email, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, like so many did. We got a bunch of questions. It's a lot of Shaedon Sharpe talk because that's what's on everybody's mind. So let's not waste any more time getting into it. Let's get to the questions. Dustin asks, with Anfernee Simons down and out, how can Shaedon Sharpe take advantage? So Part of it is whether Sharpe starts. I think he will, but there's no guarantee. They could conceivably start Matisse Thybulle at the 2. They could do any number of odd things, but it makes sense. Sharpe is the natural guy to play that spot, just because how many dudes are 2s, and then where the Blazers are in their season. It's time to let the he's not yet 20. I think he turns 20 in May. Time to let the teenager just go see what he's got. They are, I think the Blazers where they're at is they're comfortable if they make the playoffs and comfortable if they miss the playoffs. And what they want to do is get the young players, get Thybulle, get Reddish. Thybulle's not super young, but get Reddish, get Jabari Walker, get Trendon, get Shaedon Sharpe in there to see what they have. So I do think Shaedon's going to play a bunch of minutes. He's already playing 20 a night. So bump him up to 25. There's probably a diminishing returns if you played Shaedon Sharpe 35 minutes a night, but let's find out what that limit is. Let's go ahead and find out what that limit is. I think you want because winning it's not secondary. I don't want to put it that way because the players and the coaches are going to try to win the games. But for the organization's goals, because winning is not paramount to the larger organizational goals, I think you can deal with some of Shaedon Sharpe's, that's a good one for you. Somebody make that your ringtone. Shaedon Sharpe's warts, he's a bad defensive player. Teenagers are typically bad on defense. He doesn't have a lot of off the dribble juice, although he's improving in that game. It's some of the stuff that might limit the team sort of holistically. One, you just don't have any other options. You just got to roll with him. And two, it matters less after the break. That is assuming that Anfernee Simons misses time. Simons, looked like a bad ankle injury, and he was supposed to get an MRI today. I'm recording this on Wednesday evening. He was supposed to get an MRI on Wednesday, February 15th, and he did not. And Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reported that the team plans to get the MRI on Thursday. Typically, maybe that's just a random timing thing, but typically when they delay imaging stuff, it's because your leg is swollen or whatever you hurt is swollen. I don't think that's a good sign, but it didn't look like a good sign anyways. Just the way he left the court looked bad. Ankle injuries depend on, we don't know, but it looks like we're assuming, and I think it's try not to do too much of this with injury stuff, but I think Anfernee Simons is going to miss some games after the break because I think he will miss longer than 1 week. But there's certainly a chance he's back and this is all moot. But if he does, it's how can Shaedon Sharpe take advantage? Just go play your game. He doesn't need to do anything he doesn't already do. He's not going to run a million pick and rolls. He's not going to, he's not going to be put in a bunch of situations where he has to handle the ball against pressure defense. He's still, the stuff's going to revolve around Dame. They're going to run stuff through Jeremy Grant, assuming he's back from concussion protocol. Nurk's going to get touches, assuming he gets back at some points. Sharpe's ask isn't going to dramatically change. It's just he's going to be on the court more. So, go play your game. Be ready to shoot. Be aggressive. Go score. This is your opportunity. Lamar Hurd has mentioned a couple times on the broadcast that he wants more touches not more touches. That is absolutely not what he said. And he didn't even say more. What Lamar Hurd said on the broadcast. I totally mischaracterized what my man Lamar was going to say. Lamar has mentioned on the broadcast that Shaedon Sharpe doesn't get plays called for him very much. They call a handful of plays for him. They've called lob plays out of timeouts for him plenty of times, but they don't call a lot of plays for him. He gets his stuff just like on secondary actions. It's like, hey, the main action is supposed to go here, or we're running a pick and roll, and if the double team comes, be ready, because if we catch it in the middle of the floor, you either cut from the corners, or you stay in the corners, and you become a threat. I think one of the ways I would like to see Shaedon evolve is that if it is, more limited options, more limited offense, like call stuff for Shaedon Sharpe, run plays for him to, run actions for him to be the main primary ball handler, and see what that looks like. See what it looks like if Shaedon Sharpe runs 4 pick and rolls against a defense ready for him to run 4 straight pick and rolls. Is it terrible? Can he not do it? Does he not have the handle? Does he not have the vision? Can he not handle the physicality at the point of attack? Let's see it. Or is he a monster? Is he just unleashed because he's kind of what he's figured out over the last couple of weeks he's starting to put together? It's probably somewhere in between those two. I don't think he's going to be a great pick and roll player. Next question, but I want to see it. Let's see him get stuff run for him. It doesn't have to be pick and roll. It could be off-ball action stuff where it's like he comes off a couple screens to shoot it. But let's have some stuff where Shaedon Sharpe is the primary guy, because that's a way he can take a step forward. Otherwise, just play your game, Shay. As if he needs my advice. That is the answer to Dustin's question more than my advice for Shaedon Sharpe, who certainly doesn't need it. Next question comes from JD, who asks, Ant's injury presents 2 opportunities. One is to give Shaedon Sharpe his minutes for development, which we just talked about. The other is to finally see what the starting lineup of Dame plus size and defense actually looks like. Dame, Matisse Thybulle, Cam Reddish, Jeremy Grant, and Yusuf Nurkic. I am in favor of doing both. That's the trick here, right? That's the challenge for the Blazers is that they're going to be, if Ant's out, they are down a point guard. Maybe Archie Diacono even has to play a little bit just because they need ball handlers in there. They just don't have that losing Hart and losing Gary Payton or trading them away. You just have limited ball handlers. Matisse Thybulle can't really be that. I guess Cam Reddish could be that a little bit. Jeremy Grant is going to have to get more operating on the ball responsibility, which he's capable of, but he's kind of just a scorer. He's just going to go score. He's not really a sharer necessarily. So, I want to see them do both. I want to see Shaedon get those minutes and start and play, but then first sub, let's see the big lineup. The future of the Blazers, the best future of the Blazers is Dame plus size. It's right. It's no one else on the court shorter than 6'6", and everyone 6'7" plus. That's the future. Matisse Thybulle's not 6'7", right? He's not that big, but he's long and he plays bigger than he is on defense. Cam Reddish is he's 6'7", 6'8". He's big. Jeremy Grant is in that same range. Yusuf Nurkic is a giant person. Play Dame with size. That can be your first sub. That can be a second quarter lineup. That can be a late third quarter lineup. I think you get there. You just do both. All right, we got more Shaedon Sharpe talk coming after the break. But first, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the number 1 sports book in America. And listen, I think that you're going to love FanDuel because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's the second half of the NBA season is upon us. It's a perfect time to download the FanDuel app. So get that no-sweat first bet, which is a bonus bet back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to even 3-pointers made. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. Let's talk some Shaedon Sharpe, shall we? Let's answer some more questions about Shaedon Sharpe. Michael asks, the more we get to see Shaedon Sharpe figure it all out. Is there a point the front office says, yeah, no, we can't trade this dude? Or do you think he's one of the all-in chips to bring a deal to bring Dame a real all-star? Do you think he ever becomes untouchable? It's an interesting one, right? The obvious question is, yeah, Shaedon Sharpe is one of the Blazers' best trade chips, straight up. He's 19 years old. He has star potential. He's really good. When you're trading for star players, typically the ask from the other team is, can we have your best young part? Ant in a lot of ways is a better trade chip because of his salary, because of the salary slot. But Shaedon Sharpe has a, I don't know if like clear higher ceiling, but to me a higher ceiling because he's younger. We just don't know. He's like the steps from 19 to 23 clarify a lot. I think people were pretty darn excited about Anfernee Simons at 19. Shaedon Sharpe's better than Ant was at 19. I think that's not particularly controversial. But like, yeah, what I'm saying is like things change. Perception changes once you play 4 years in the league. You're just more, they just seen you play more. So I do think Shaedon Sharpe is the obvious like chip. But it depends on what you need. Do you need Simons and Sharpe to make the trade work? Is there a trade that involves just the picks and Anfernee Simons? Is there a trade that involves like just some picks and Nazir Little or something like that because of what the other team needs? Picks and Nazir Little's not going to get you an all-star. I'm just saying like depends on sort of what the all-in goal is, what the all-in plan is, all like what the other side needs. But the more interesting part of this question, the part of this question that I am more curious about is there a point where it's like, nope, sorry, Shaedon Sharpe's the guy? I kind of think no, because I think the team is committed to trying it with Dame. Once you give Dame that contract extension, you're kind of, I mean, they're already like pot committed. But once they do that, once they give him the max contract extension, 2 years, $100 and some million, whatever it was, a bunch of money. It's 2 years and 35% of the cap whenever the cap gets finalized in those 2 years. But it's gonna be like $55 million. It's a good deal. He's got a better job than you. When you do that, you're committed to Damian Lillard, like to go for it with him. And they've been really, really, really clear about wanting to do that. They've been skating these sort of two developmental paths, right? Or a developmental path and a competitive path. And when you do that, you end up mediocre, which is what the Blazers are, right? Like you kind of got to commit to being a developmental team and be bad and try to get good, or commit to being a good team and try to be like good, right? Like have more veteran players that can contribute, have someone other than Shaedon Sharpe who could play the two when someone gets hurt. It's like I don't think he ever becomes truly untouchable, but I do think there's a point where you say Shaedon Sharpe's so good that the level of player, like, okay, you just absolutely cross off the OG Anunobys of the world, the Mikal Bridges of the world. It's like, yeah, really good two-way wing. Sorry, it's got to be an all-NBA type to move Shaedon. Is that irresponsible? If you're trying to go win it with Dame, you kind of got to be willing to commit whatever, like, and there's like, assuming that there is like a real bona fide star on the board, it's like, yeah, available, whatever it is, like the league moves quickly. So someone will be disgruntled or some team will be pivoting or whatever it might be. Think back to 3 weeks ago in the Brooklyn Nets. It looked like they're going to win the championship. Now they have a totally different roster. So I think there is a point where it's not that Shaedon Sharpe becomes untouchable. It's that the tier of players you're willing to trade him for jumps up. And I think that's what you're hoping. That it's not like, yeah, we would consider trading for like a all defense type wing who also has some offense, like the best 3-and-D wings in the league, like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Or like, okay, no, it has to be a Pascal Siakam, like a guy who's made multiple NBA teams. It has to be like just a name. This is not like someone who's going to get traded, but like it has to be a Brandon Ingram, right? Like who is 6'9", all NBA potential, all-star forward type of guy, like the perfect sort of prototypical thing everybody wants. Like I think it would be bumping up into that tier type of player, less untouchable and more so like the ask done changed. Nick asks, what does Shaedon Sharpe need to improve to take the next step heading into next season? He's got to become a better defender. My man Jacob G on Hawthorne asked about Shaedon Sharpe's defense. sometimes he just gets dusted. Sometimes he's not paying attention off the ball. Sometimes he's physicality like overwhelms him. Most of the problem is for him when you see it. There's some on ball, just like dudes blow past him type of stuff. I think he's done better at being physical at the point of attack. He's not great there, but he's done way better over the last month at like straight line drives. He's not getting cooked on as much. The problem with him is mostly like his man's on the opposite side of the floor. So he's over in help. The ball swings to him. He has to close out, contain the drive, and anticipate where both his help is going to be and where, if his help comes, where he would need to move as the next rotation. He just doesn't have that yet. It's hard to get there. That's a hard thing to do. It's like, okay, I got to close out. I got to take little steps to close out, but I can't close out too short or he's going to make a three. And if I close out too hard, he's going to blow by me. So I got to perfectly measured closeout, contain. Then when he kicks, my job is actually to go out and find the ball because the help behind me has picked up my man. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff to process. He's just not good at it. He has to get a little better on defense. His handle needs to improve a bunch. And his like playmaking skills, if he's going to be like a real on ball guy. He can score on his own, but he doesn't really pass at a high level right now. He gets a little better at all of those things. Like he doesn't need to make all of those his jumps. Like progression is not linear, and it's also it's slow. So like he needs to get a little better at all of those things, and then he can be an NBA. Is he an NBA starter next year? I don't know. Like he could probably start in the league, but like what level of team could he start on? I think is a better question. I think he's going to be a really good basketball player. I think he's looked really good over the last 2.5 weeks. I also think like you don't have to remember back that far where he looked like a teenager on a lot of nights. And it's like, yeah, he's not quite there yet. He can, the test for Sharpe is a real NBA offseason. It's an offseason where he doesn't get hurt in the summer league. And so he can like get out and improve. The test for the difference between guys who are pretty good and guys who become stars for a long time is just a maniacal commitment to improving in the offseason. It is just absolutely wild work ethic. That is the difference between the best players, the good and great, is consistency and the consistency to work. It is hard for us to know because you're just going to like, no one's going to be like, yeah, he worked pretty hard, but he worked at like NBA starter level and not NBA all-star level. And then the difference is subtle to the point where me and you probably wouldn't even know it. But there is a maniacal level of commitment that someone like Damian Lillard, who is like on tour with Adidas in China and still waking up at 6 a.m. to get workouts in, like that type of just like, you got to go get it done type of work. And that is the test for Sharpe. And I think it'll be interesting is how much he puts in the off season, because he has the skills to be really special. It's just what he can do from there. Next question comes from Juan Casa, who asks, how long should a coach give a player to develop in game? And how does the development of our current pieces sync up with Dame's window? Juan Casa is asking about developmental minutes, pointing out that it's a longer email, so I kind of pared down the question. But Juan Casa is asking about developmental minutes, pointing out that Anfernee Simons really got going when it was clear for him to play, and that Trendon Watford got going when it was cleared the decks is what I'm trying to say, cleared for him to play, and CJ McCollum, really took off that first year he became a true starter in the league after breaking out in the playoffs, and that minutes matter for development. And I think I agree in general, but the question is, what are you comfortable with? Shaedon Sharpe, the reason he is better now is because the Blazers let him play through all of his struggles in December. And he was playing a little bit less, to be sure. But minutes matter for development. I'm not maybe a big believer that you need to play like 1,500 minutes as a rookie. I think plenty of guys have developed behind the scenes for the Blazers. We've kind of seen that, like the Pat Connaughtons and Gary Trent Jr.'s of the world, who kind of like don't play. Anfernee Simons didn't even play that much as a rookie. And then like, when you give him minutes, can get there. Ant probably got too many minutes too early and wasn't ready. I think he's a pretty good example of this. It's like you want to give him minutes, but what type of team are you going to be? Because developmental minutes are usually rocky minutes. Like letting young guys play are rocky minutes. Even Anfernee Simons, when he broke out last year, kind of not out of nowhere, but he struggled in December. He did not shoot the ball well in December, came out, all of a sudden he was getting minutes, and he's just like, his efficiency just scaled up right with him with minutes. Not everyone scales up like that. So some guys, you give them more minutes, it's actually worse. There's diminishing returns, and like their development isn't as good with just like a much larger role. Their development isn't as smooth, I should say, with a much larger role. So the question isn't like, developmental minutes are valuable. Drew Eubanks has I think improved because he's had a role every night to improve. But I will say Trendon Watford like bounced out of the rotation, then got some minutes and kind of took advantage where it fit because he's developing a skill behind the scenes. Like it's a real balance. So the question for developmental minutes is like, are you committed to being a team that can compete for a championship? Well, then you probably can't play young guys and like let them work out the issues, right? It's hard to do that. It's really hard to do that. See Warriors, Golden State. Like it's hard. They have struggled to find a rhythm between veterans and youngsters, and it's tough for them. But if you're okay being decent but not really, really, really good, then you can find those minutes. You can find those minutes for Drew Eubanks and Shaedon Sharpe, and it's easier. And then you have real value, and it pays off dividends down the line. So developmental minutes really. Like the minutes for young guys, the question is more about what are your team's needs, goals, and plans in the immediate term versus whether they pay off. Because in general, they will be valuable. It's just like, can you sacrifice wins because you will be worse playing young guys and letting them figure out the NBA game than playing veterans who are going to have less screw-ups when you play them in the game. All right, couple more questions to close out the show. Join me in the third segment, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. And you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's close out this mailbag show. If you want to get involved in a mailbag episode, email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. I'll probably do one of these next week, depending on the news. But email me anyways, because it's a great way to kind of, I'll save questions for the future, or sort of a good way to talk about like what's on listeners' minds, because this show is for you. So email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. Our next question comes from two folks, Travis and Claire, both asked the same question. Is there value in making the playoffs for the experience for young players on the team versus being a lottery team and gaining an asset? I don't think, for me, I'm going to be honest. No, I don't think there's value in making the playoffs because I don't think like the trade, and it's mostly about trade-off. I don't think like blanket statement, like playing in the playoffs doesn't matter. It does. You can gain valuable experience, particularly for somebody like a Shaedon Sharpe, to like see what it's like to, when you get to the playoffs, the hyper-specific game planning for personnel ramps up. So it's both your preparation for an opponent and the opponent's preparation for you, and to see what it's like to play in a game where they know what you want to do. They know exactly what you want to do. They know all your play calls. They know all your tendencies. The guy who's guarding you has probably watched something like 60% of your shot attempts on the year coming into this game. Like they are ready for you. And then by game 3 of the series, they've also just played against you. It gets really. You can't fake the funk in an NBA playoff series. It's why I'm in favor of keeping 7-game series throughout, because the 7-game series rewards the better team. The better team wins. Sometimes a healthier team is the better team, but the better team wins. So the question is like, the trade-off for me is, I don't think there is more value in the Blazers losing in the first round of the playoffs and Shaedon Sharpe seeing 6 games of playoff basketball versus the Blazers missing the playoffs and getting the 9th pick in the NBA draft. That's it for me. If it were, if they had a chance to be like 5th or 6th, and I think there's too many teams in their way, and I think they're too hurt right now, and they just haven't been good with any consistency. They won 4 games in a row to begin the season. They haven't had a 4-game winning streak since literally the first week of the season. The first 4-0, haven't won 4 straight since then at any point this year. It's not like they just haven't been consistently good for months. So it's the idea that they're going to just like rip off a bunch of wins. I just don't see it happening. So even if they make the playoffs, I'm assuming they're a low-level playoff team, which means they're going to play a really good team in the first round, which means they're going to lose. I don't think there's value in like getting to a 6th game of the playoffs and letting Shaedon Sharpe et al. And others see what playoff basketball looks like and feels like versus getting a better lottery pick for what this team wants to be. They want to be good next year. Like, as much as like there's talk about how young they are from the coach, like their core is not young and inexperienced. Their core dudes who play are not young and inexperienced. Even Matisse Thybulle, part of this team, is like he's been on a very good playoff team. If you're going to add veterans to this mix, you're going to add likely veterans with playoff experience. Damian Lillard has been there, man. He's seen a lot of playoff games. Nurk has been there. Jeremy Grant has been there, played in the Western Conference Finals. Like, Ant has been there. He hasn't played very well in the playoffs. You'd like to see him play better. But, like, I don't think the back half of the roster getting the experience is worth the trade-off for getting a lottery pick. Your mileage may vary. That's the beauty of it. Joseph asks, Joe Cronin said that Dame and Ant make an elite offense, and if I understood him correctly, they can pretty much put whoever around those two and still be good on offense. Do I agree? And if so, what would your ideal offseason be in terms of putting dudes around them to make the defense average to good? So I'm not going to do an offseason in February, but I do like this question because it's more like theoretical. Dame and Ant are really good together. I'm kind of in favor in the long run of breaking up the pairing, but that's not what the question is. Assuming those two gentlemen are on the team and playing a bunch of minutes together, which if they're on the team, they're going to play a bunch of minutes together because they're good. Like, how far can you go? How far can you push it? I think there were times this year that the Blazers' lack of shooting, Nurk not a threat people are worried about, even if he started shooting way better this year. Josh Hart, not someone who would shoot. So like two dudes on the court who you didn't need to guard. I think there were times this year where that screwed up the Blazers offense in close games. The lack of shooting in tight games hurt them. So I don't think you can go like, I don't think like 3 Tony Allens would work. Like the guys you just like straight up do not need to guard. But I do think you can, because of how special Dame is as an offense, like as a guy who can draw defenders, who can get into the teeth of defenses. Driving has been incredible this year. Get into the teeth and kick out and make and like create an advantage and draw too. Because he can do that, I think you can push the limits of how good you can be on defense. I think if Nurk was a little bit different of a defender, I think it would change up my feelings on this, because his, say you had the exact same level of offense from Nurk, but a more versatile defender on the other end. Like I think the trade-off from offense to defense is worth it. I think you can tilt really heavily pushing towards the Matisse Thybulles of the world, where it's like, this dude is like 85% defense with a little bit of offense, but not really much in there at all. I think you can sort of lean that way and see how much you could get out of it. The best teams have two-way players. The best teams are guys who can play on both ends. If the Blazers are going to be really good, they're going to have guys that play on both ends. But I do think, I guess I generally agree with Joe's premise, even though I don't agree with the plan. If you have those two dudes on the floor, you're going to be a very good offensive team. So you can kind of punt a little bit on offense with the other three guys, or at least really heavily emphasize defenders with the other three guys. And I think you can push your offseason approach to prioritize defenders, with the caveat that there is at some point a limit to what Dame can truly do on his own if you don't have to guard like anyone out there. And I think we've seen that in the past with the Al-Farouq Aminu, Mo Harkless wings. Is like, yeah, they were an elite offense until you got to the playoffs, and it's like, oh yeah, we don't have to guard these dudes. It's going to be easy. And I think that is the challenge for the Blazers, is they got to get two-way players, but if it's two-way players where they're better defensively than they are on offense, I think that's fine. Last question of the show comes from Alex K, who asks, how do you fix the dunk contest? I'm bummed that Shaedon Sharpe's not in the dunk contest. I totally get it. I talked about it on the show. The NBA did this to themselves. Invite him to the Rising Stars game. He'd already be in Salt Lake City. When you didn't invite him to the Rising Stars game and prioritize G Leaguers, you left yourself open for him being like, I don't want to go, actually. And I do not think the way to make the All-Star game, to make the dunk contest better, is to force Shaedon Sharpe to go. It's like a dude against his will going is like, what is extending an invitation? It's like a mandate, right? It's like, you are now dunking. The way to fix the dunk contest is a time machine. It's to go back to 2004 and make LeBron James cowardly but do the dunk contest. He ruined it for a generation of stars. It's LeBron James's fault. I think this is the worst misstep of LeBron's career. done some other things that I don't particularly care for. But LeBron was the best athlete in the league. He was a superstar. He's obsessed with being Michael Jordan. And what did MJ do in the 80s? He was the dunk contest king. Before the championships, MJ was taken off from the free throw line with the gold chain on, going up against Dominique Wilkins in star-studded dunk contests. Young LeBron James should have done the dunk contest. Because he didn't do the dunk contest, a whole generation of stars after him said, I'm not doing it either. There is no reason that Ja Morant isn't in the dunk contest. One of the most exciting players in the league, an incredible in-game dunker. Little guys are really fun dunkers. He should be in it. He should be in it. He should be in it. Anthony Edwards should be in it. It's like, it was awesome when Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine did the dunk contest. Incredible, right? Derrick Jones Jr. has had some fun dunk contests. Those dudes are not the level of stars we need to revive it. LeBron blew it, and because he blew it, the whole generation for the next 2 decades of superstars after him said, I'm cool. I'm good. I don't need to be involved. The closest thing to a star in the dunk contest we've seen, Damian Lillard was in it, but he's like not a dunker. It's like Paul George, pre changing the number to 13 PG in Indiana. You screwed it up for all of us, LeBron. So we need a time machine because we need to change the perception of it across the league. Okay, that's going to do it for today's mailbag. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com if you want to get involved in a future one. Tomorrow's show, it will be an all-star extravaganza. Shout out to all my RuPaul heads out there who get that reference. We will talk all things all-star, and I have a really, really, really fun interview that you don't want to miss. So come back for tomorrow's show. Tell your friends to do the same. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.